Welcome everyone. My name is Milda Ferreira. You have joined Lithuanian professionals in Stockholm clubs. Well-established virtual webinar session, where today we'll be covering probably one of the most important subjects of all times, which we all can relate to, which is health and sustainability. Alpesh is a strong believer that the power really of collecting will and efforts can make a difference. So following our post-webinar on the well-being, where some of you participated related to COVID-19, this time we decided to go one step deeper and really to touch the base of the key opposites, I would say, faced by the mankind at present, which are toxicity and sustainability. And really, no matter whether you already are on a mission to contribute making the world a better place or not, we all want to attain a better, healthier, a longer life. And in order to help you to make the right choices, not only related to your personal health, but also health of our planet, we invited one of our former I would say colleagues within the Lithuanian community who have relocated from Sweden to Dubai, Milda Björken. And Milda has really dedicated the past years making research around the potential long-term impact and different types of implications of the toxicity that you are surrounded with. And we agreed that Milda will share her thoughts and insights of how we can achieve a healthy, sustainable, and non-toxic living. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Milda. Milda, the stage is yours. Thank you.
From Milda to Milda, thanks a lot for this beautiful introduction, and thank you so much, LPS, for inviting me. I really appreciate this opportunity. A few words in addition to what Milda said. All the work and research that I've done about issues related to non-toxic, clean, sustainable living is a pure labor of love. My professional experience is in finance, more specifically in asset management. Currently, I'm involved with startups in a business incubator, helping them establish themselves. However, when I started scratching the surface of all of the issues related to clean living, I just couldn't stop when I realized the profound impact on our well-being and actually on our future, if I'm completely frank. So my goal here today is not to give you medical advice, not to give you life advice, but rather maybe plant some questions in your head, and you may already have a few of those. In the best case scenario, put you on a path that will lead you to a more healthy and more sustainable future. Just a question, can you see my slide? Just because I see now Milda's slide.
No, Milda, we can't see your slide. I will stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, I think because...
Here we go.
Do you want to continue? Yes, I do want to continue. We'll see this one and share. Perfect. So before I go into the different topics that I will raise with you today, I would like just to say a word of caution. Depending on how familiar you are with these topics, they may feel overwhelming at some point because they are quite complex. They impact how we as individuals feel. So I think there is one thing that you can keep in mind when thinking about those issues. And I'm trying to switch a slide here, but somehow it's not working. We'll see here now. So the advice that I have for you is, if you feel overwhelmed and you want to start somewhere, always focus on the first step. It doesn't really matter where you start. The most important thing is that you feel like starting. It's actually that you do so. I really like this expression that says that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So it's As I said, it doesn't really matter where you start. It's the most important thing is that you start, because the progress is actually the cumulative amount of the small steps that we take in order to improve our lives, in order to improve our future. And this applies to, of course, to any area of our lives. Having said that, we can look at the non-toxic steps that we all together gonna take tonight, and there's gonna be all 5 of them. The first one is where I'm gonna explain very briefly to you the difference and the similarities between the non-toxic and the sustainable issues and terms. I am going to explain to you why these issues matter, why they're important, and how they affect us. One of the central themes is going to be non-toxic food, because it's something that we ingest, something that affects us very, very deeply and internally and very profoundly. I'll briefly touch upon other toxic exposures that are present in our daily lives, and I'll round up with a few very practical, well-researched non-toxic tips from my life and from my day-to-day life. So let's dive in. The first topic is then the non-toxicity versus sustainability. What is it, and why they differ, why are they similar? Very simply put, sustainability is a broader concept, and all the issues related to non-toxicity are part of the broader sustainability framework. As a rule, when we talk about sustainability, we tend to focus a lot on climate change, on all of the things that are related to our ecosystem and how it's impacted by human activity. My personal observation, and this is not a formal definition, but when we talk about non-toxic issues, we normally talk about health change rather than climate change. And the focus of my presentation tonight is to highlight especially health change related to our environment, related to our ecosystem and our activity and how it impacts us. Just to show you that I'm not really taking these concepts out of thin air, I would like to very, very briefly say why I think that these issues, non-toxicity and sustainability, are very intimately interrelated. If you know of this framework, Cradle to Cradle, if you've been involved with sustainability issues, it's the golden standard for certifying truly sustainable products. And this organization, this framework, they have a very rigid certification system with different categories, and non-toxic inputs is one of the inputs that is being judged when looking at the broader sustainability of a product. In addition to that, this framework also looks at what kind of materials a product is made of, what sort of energy was being used, water treatment, and all the treatment of people involved in manufacturing of this product. So there is rigid conceptual framework related to both non-toxicity and sustainability, and these two areas are tightly interconnected. Having said that, let's look at the different sources of toxicity that are present daily in our lives. There's actually quite a few of them, but I find that these 6 categories are among the major ones. And the sad reality is that we are drowning in toxins. We are living in the environment that is inherently unhealthy, and this has to do with the industrial activity that we humans engage in, and this is something that is super hard to avoid. Actually, we can no longer avoid all the toxins in our lives. The only thing is that we can do is we can reduce them. And there is an urgency when it comes to improving sustainability, when it comes to tackling climate change. However, I still haven't noticed the same sort of urgency when it comes to tackling issues related to toxicity, despite the fact they actually profoundly impact our health. So as I'm starting to approach this topic of health, I'll quickly go and explain to you why it matters. Yes, we are bathing in toxins, but why is this important? Well, the fact is that, as I mentioned, we can no longer avoid them. They are part of our life, and they are not only part of our life, they are part of future generations as well. Scientists have tested cord blood from one-day-old babies, newborn babies, for over 400 chemicals, and sadly found presence of over 300 of them, meaning that one-day-old babies, they already have loads and loads of chemicals in their bloodstream, and they come from us parents, because we are inherently unhealthy and toxic. And you may be eating what you think is a healthy diet. You may be trying to implement changes in your life, but we simply cannot escape the fact that, that we are living in a very, very polluted environment, that our children use and suck on toys made out of plastic that is toxic. We are exposed, constantly exposed to radiation, which affects us on a cellular level. We are taking medicine that is supposed to make us feel better, but they are made out of petrochemicals. Cleaning materials is a major source of, can be a major source of chemicals. We apply skincare that is loaded with petrochemicals. We eat food that is contaminated, and we rush to the hospital with our newborn babies to inject them with vaccines that contain traces of heavy metals and other harmful chemicals or preservatives. So as you see, this exposure comes from all different sides, and it's really hard to avoid because it's simply everywhere. And what happens then when we get exposed daily, monthly, yearly? What happens to our bodies? Well, the process goes like this. As soon as a toxin enters our bodies, it starts attacking our cells or cell membranes. So if we look at the sources, they all act more or less similar way. A toxin enters our bodies, it causes a process that's called oxidative stress or oxidative damage. It's a process whereby a toxin acts as a free radical. It's basically a similar process like aging, and you can think of it as a rusting process. It is what happens to apple or banana when we peel them and let them be in an open air. You know, they get brown. In the same way, our cells get damaged as soon as they're exposed to toxins. And what happens when our cells get damaged? We get sick. This is the initiation of disease. And actually, more and more doctors and scientists agree that the cause of all chronic diseases is exactly the same process: oxidative damage, oxidative stress. Luckily to us, there are ways we can counteract this process. We can try to remove the sources of toxicity. It will help us. It's not an easy process. It's not an easy process to identify to which toxins we have been exposed. It's not even easy to measure all the different toxic substances in our bodies, because some of them are present in our blood, some are hiding in our bones, in our tissues, and so on and so forth. So it's a complicated process. What we also can do is try to increase antioxidants in our life and in our diet, or in the form of supplements, they're important because they simply counteract this process of oxidative stress in our cells. What happens when we, year after year, get exposed to the toxins in our lives is that our immune system gets overwhelmed, and the entire foundation of our well-being, including the immune system and microbiome and gut lining, gets inflamed in a sense. Gut lining is where over 70% our immune system is located. That's why having a really good gut health is extremely important. Gut lining is a very thin lining. It's a barrier that keeps any undigested food, any toxins, any bacteria out of our bloodstream and out of and getting into our organs. When our gut lining, which is super, super delicate, very, very thin, gets damaged through this constant continuous cumulative toxic exposure, it starts to leak. This condition is called leaky gut, and it's associated with all sort of adverse physiological and biological effects on our health. And it basically is a process whereby we get poisoned. So all the substances that are not supposed to get into our bloodstream, they do get into our bloodstream. And the reason why I have Roundup here on the slide is that it contains one of the most toxic substances in the world. It's called, maybe you've heard of it, it's called glyphosate. It's produced by former Monsanto, now owned by Bayer. And it's also the largest active substance in one of the most commonly used herbicides in the world. It's how it's a substance that we spray our crops with. The tragic part here is it's water soluble. It gets, as we spray our crops, it gets into our water, into our water system. As it gets evaporated, it gets into the air. With the rain, it gets transported long distances, and plants absorbing glyphosate with the roots. And that way, as we consume plants and as we consume animals that eat those plants, glyphosate ends up in our bodies, impacting our gut lining, leading to leaky gut. And actually, it's been declared, glyphosate has been declared as, I don't remember, possible or probable cancerogen, and it's been associated with a number of very serious chronic conditions. So yeah, it's a very serious issue, and it's a toxin that is constantly present in our environment, and which is very hard to avoid. To show you how complex the issue of toxicity is, I'm going to touch about maybe a little bit a typical topic, which is weight gain. Technically speaking, even if you are on a super healthy diet, you can still be gaining weight, not because of the food per se, but because of the high amount of contaminants that it contains. And scientists suspect that some of the chemicals can be so-called obesogenic chemicals, meaning obesity generating. They trigger stem cells to turn into fat cells, or trigger fat cells to grow bigger. And as we grow into adulthood, our amount of fat cells in our body stays more or less constant, meaning that exposure to obesogenic chemicals early in life is absolutely critical. If we get exposed early on, the risk of us having weight issues later on is much, much higher. So these chemicals can affect us in so many different ways. And just to show where they are present, one of the most common ones, and the ones that you probably have certainly heard of, is so-called BPA. It's found in almost all hard plastics. It's found in canned food lining, in plastic food storage, even in the cash receipts that we get in the stores, and many other items. And please do not get confused when a product that you're buying says it's BPA free. The industry is smart, and the industry has come up with different BPA derivatives such as BPS, BPF that are as dangerous and endocrine system disrupting to us. Then there is a bunch of other chemicals that are also equally dangerous when it comes to the risk of developing of developing obesity, but I'll maybe leave them to you to study a little bit later when you get the slides. So I don't take too much of your time here. Another important topic that I wanted to touch with you is sometimes this reliance that we have, depending on the country that we live in, that authorities take care of the issues related to health, related to safety. Well, once again, depending on the country, this may be more or less true, but I would encourage you not to over rely on any authorities, be it municipalities, government, or even the doctors. The reason is that the conventional medical system doesn't even acknowledge the link between non-toxic or toxic issues and diseases. So for example, if you are a really big fan of tuna and you eat loads of it and you have skyrocketing levels of mercury in your bloodstream, there is no protocol in the medical system that would tell the doctors to test your blood for mercury. You would be probably experiencing, if you had mercury poisoning in your body, at least some brain fog, maybe impaired hearing or any other conditions. So as a rule, you would get treated by pills that would address the symptom of your health, but not necessarily the root cause of your disease. So my point here is that our medical system is built around disease management rather than disease prevention, and let alone health promotion. So it's very important that you get educated about the different issues, that you take the time to research whatever condition you may have, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions when you meet your doctors. They may be the most well-meaning doctors, but they may still be not aware with the issues that I'm talking about, simply because they are not really part of the conventional way that medical doctors are treating patients. When it comes to safety of consumer products, I've mentioned that some plastics are leaking dangerous chemicals. When it comes to consumer safety, I must say, a lot of improvements have been made. There are a lot of different labels and certifications that warn us for this and that. However, just because these labels, they have been mushrooming there, it's hard to actually know what is what, which one is more safe than the other, which one is more relevant than the other. And we have all the good labels on the left here, the ones that I really find very credible. And then just to show that you can, as a consumer, you can get exposed also to a myriad of other labels that are actually nothing less than empty labels. So such statements as eco or eco-friendly, they're not certified. They actually don't mean anything. This is just a marketing trick by companies to make you buy a product that, looks green or looks better than the rest. But these, as I said, are not certified statements. And with that, I'll go over to the main subject that we have today, and it's non-toxic food. We tend to see food as a source of calories and a source of nutrition in terms of micronutrients, which is vitamins and minerals, and macronutrients, which is fat, proteins, and carbs. This is, of course, a correct way of seeing food, but it's also a very reductionist, very simple way of seeing food. Our dietary choices have actually a massive impact on our well-being, because food is a big source of healing. We're just discovering now that food has the capacity to reverse certain medical conditions, such as type 2 diabetes, chronic diseases, or autoimmune diseases. It also impacts the onset and the development of cancer. Food actually contains so-called microRNAs, which are kind of information pathways. It's a way plants communicate with animals and with the entire ecosystem. So by eating certain type of foods, our bodies are getting a lot of information, and these microRNAs, they have the capacity to actually even alter our genes. They have the capacity to either switch on or to switch off our genes. And this is something that the field of epigenetics looks very, very closely into. So my point here is whether, to put it very simply, whether you choose a burger or a plate of well-diversified salad, it does make a difference. A calorie is not simply a calorie. Where it comes from is very important for our well-being and for our health. Unfortunately, food can also be and is the major source of contaminants as well. There is a large amount of food toxins in our food, and it's important to know which they are. I've grouped them in a few boxes, and the first one contains pesticides and herbicides, which are related or linked to birth defects and certain cancers. GMOs have a very uncertain impact on our health. What we do know is that GMO foods, as a rule, are very heavily sprayed by chemicals. There's also growth hormones, and hormones are, as a rule, given to cows to increase milk production, and these hormones also have the capacity to affect us through insulin-like growth factor called IGF-1, which is also adversely related to our health. How it gets into our food? It's mostly through growing and cultivation methods. Another group contains artificial foods and colorings and dyes. It contains food preservatives, and these are commonly called food additives. If you buy an already finished food product, this is where you can find these toxins. Another group is extremely hard to avoid. It's heavy metals and dioxins, and these environmental toxins, which I mentioned, they are everywhere. And BPA, BPS, and BPFs I already mentioned. They are, when it comes to food, they mostly found in food containers, especially if you use warm food containers or eat warm food from plastic food containers. And finally, the last group of chemicals which appear when we use certain cooking methods, especially barbecuing, roasting, or mostly barbecuing meat when it gets exposed to very high temperatures. What we can do with these groups and these toxins, and how can we avoid them? So if I take the same list, What I personally do to avoid this, I choose organic produce. As a rule, they don't contain pesticides, GMOs, and growth hormones. To avoid any food additives, I really avoid processed foods. My first-hand choice is whole foods, plant-based. As I mentioned, environmental toxins are the worst. And for these reasons, I'm extremely picky about the country of origin where a certain product comes from. For example, if I see cinnamon that comes from Sri Lanka and I see cinnamon that comes from India, I would choose one that comes from Sri Lanka simply because I know that industrial activity in this country is much smaller. This is not a clear-cut approach, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But this is as good as it gets when it comes to trying to avoid these toxins. Or for example, when buying green tea, if I have Chinese one or Japanese, I would go for the Japanese one because I know that they have deeper traditions and stricter regulations when it comes to producing tea. When it comes to BPA, BPS, and BPFs, this unilaterally just avoid plastic in whatever shape or form. And finally, when it comes to cooking method, certain chemicals tend to appear only in animal products, so you can try to reduce them. And as I mentioned, very high cooking temperatures can also be harmful. I keep mentioning this concept of organic produce, and I thought that I would explain why eating organic is important and why it is healthier. Actually, foods that we eat today, they're not the same that our ancestors used to eat. Just because our soils are depleted, we are surrounded by all of these toxins, so the food that we're eating is not nearly as nutritious as it used to be. For example, if we just take a simple apple, red apple, so during the course of 7 to 8 years, the mineral content has, just a regular apple, declined significantly. So calcium has nearly halved, magnesium declined by over 80%, and iron almost disappeared from our apples. And while organic is not the holy grail, it's still our best shot because studies in food labs have shown that organic food contains only almost 3 times more nutrients compared to foods produced in a conventional way. What we do know for sure when you buy certified organic is that, as I mentioned before, it will not contain certain chemicals. Organic doesn't mean non-toxic. It can still be contaminated, but it will be contaminated less. And it's as good as it gets when it comes to making choices for us as consumers, if you ask me. Then what to do when you cannot buy organic, or it's simply not available, sometimes not affordable, sometimes doesn't make sense because some organic produce gets shipped from another end of the world, and it's just sustainably speaking, it doesn't make sense to buy them. What I personally do then is that I try to buy vegetables and fruits on the so-called Clean 15 list. It's a list produced year after year by Environmental Working Group that tests most commonly both vegetables and fruits in the US. Test them for different pesticides, not all of them, but for some. And they are produced 2 lists. One is the green list, which is okay to buy non-organic, and the so-called Dirty Dozen list, which contains all of the mostly sprayed vegetables, berries, and fruits. So as a rule, myself, when I cannot buy organic, I buy produce that is protected with peel that I can remove. For example, avocados or or mangoes, or well, basically anything with a peel. Also not a clear-cut approach, but it's as good as it gets. While, for example, I would never buy berries that have been produced conventionally, because we do know that they are very heavily sprayed. Same goes with grapes, same goes with bell peppers, and so on and so forth. What I also do is that I soak whatever produce that I buy. I soak it in a salt solution, 1 part salt, 9 part water. It's been shown in scientific studies to remove the residues of pesticides. As I mentioned, organic produce can still contain some traces of pesticides that come from maybe nearby fields, or by air, or by rain. So by soaking and scrubbing them, you make sure that you remove the remaining traces. And the studies have shown that the solution is as effective, or sometimes even more effective, as any commercially bought washer. You can do the same with vinegar, but you need to use undiluted vinegar, which is not as affordable if you just buy pure vinegar and salt all they produce in it compared to salt. So I prefer to salt. However, it's important to rinse your produce after soaking to make sure that there's no salt left. I'd like also to say a word of caution when it comes to heavy metals. When I speak about these issues with my friends and with family or some other people, I tend to hear like, yeah, well, you know, but heavy metals, they're present in so small amounts, so maybe it's not that important. The fact is that you don't want heavy metals in any amounts in your body, near your body, on your body, anywhere. Especially when it comes to babies and small kids, they are extremely sensitive. What happens is that heavy metals, they accumulate very slowly in our bodies, and our bodies struggle to eliminate them effectively. Sometimes it takes years and years and years to get rid of them, and during that time we get constantly exposed to new sources of heavy metals. So they're just by accumulating in our body, in the end causing adverse health impacts. And as I mentioned, our conventional medical system is not really equipped to deal with those issues. Some people even have a genetic predisposition that prevents them from effectively getting rid of heavy metals. And for them, reducing exposure is extremely critical. Another thing that you can do in order to reduce your exposure to heavy metals is, I mentioned this before, at least reduce your consumption of animal products. I didn't say eliminate. Reducing is already a good step forward. You probably have heard this before, that the higher up the food chain you go, the higher the concentration of heavy metals, because they slowly accumulate throughout the food chain, and they get absorbed by the different animals as they consume each other. And the bigger the animal, the bigger the concentration of heavy metals and other chemicals. When it comes to plants, on the other hand, they help you detox. It doesn't mean that they are not toxic. They are, of course they are, like everything else. They can be as toxic or even more toxic than the animal products. Key message here is this: it's not what you eat, but what you absorb. And researchers have shown in the studies that it looks like diet rich in raw vegetables and fruits and fiber actually help us eliminate heavy metals. So even if you ingest them with the right diet, you can quicker eliminate them from your body. Then there are certain foods that are especially effective when it comes to helping our bodies clean themselves and detox themselves. The ones that have been proven effective by human studies are broccoli, garlic, and all the vitamin C rich foods. So don't be afraid to load on them. They're really, really good for you. Another way to reduce your toxic exposure when it comes to food is by avoiding certain items. For example, I personally avoid buying any rice products. It doesn't mean that we don't eat rice in our family. We do, we love rice actually. But what I do is I buy brown or black rice that has been shown to even if it's contaminated by arsenic, which most of the rice is, it helps eliminate it quicker from our bodies. And I also cook rice in a certain way to reduce the amount of possible arsenic available present there. As I mentioned earlier, overheating food is also not good. It leads to creation of acrylamide. Even baby food and infant formulas have been found to contain lead, cadmium, arsenic, and other heavy metals. This is really gross. And this is one of the earliest topics that I started look into early on, years ago, and which made me really mad, was a association called Clean Label Project. They found that over 80% of baby food and formulas that they had tested contained these very dangerous heavy metals. And I already introduced you to the concept of how they work in our children's bodies, in our bodies. We don't want them. Cocoa is notoriously rich in lead and cadmium, so don't be afraid to ask your favorite chocolate producer what's in the chocolate. They should be testing the chocolate, and they should have the test reports available to you as a consumer. Certain supplements can be high in lead, so your favorite vitamin or supplement producer also should have lab reports available to you. And fish, unfortunately, is also quite toxic, especially in mercury, as the waters that they live in are contaminated. They can also be quite contaminated by microplastics, which our oceans and seas are filled with nowadays. Circling back to this concept of sustainability, eating more plant-based is not only a way to start your own cleaner, non-toxic journey, it's also a way to make a very impactful choice in terms of sustainability. 1/3 of global cereal production goes in to feed our animals, and it takes 11 kilos of cereal that is suitable for human consumption to produce only 1 kilo of animal products, including meat, milk, and eggs. So we often hear these debates that we are running the risk of not being able to feed our growing population, and that's why we need to spray our crops to increase the yields. That's why we need the GMOs and so on and so forth. This is simply not true. If we modify our diets accordingly, we are more than able to feed everybody on this planet, but we need to be willing, of course, to make those changes. And they don't need to be massive. You don't need to go vegan tomorrow. But as I mentioned, just by reducing your consumption of certain products already makes a meaningful impact. And this has been measured by scientists that looked into different measures that we take by trying to be greener, by trying to be more eco-aware, eco-friendly, and so on. And they have found that eating a plant-based diet is a very efficient way of becoming more sustainable. It's actually much more efficient than recycling, which at least for me was quite surprising to see. Finally, I'll quickly touch upon some other toxic sources in our lives. There are many more of them, but I think at least these ones are the ones that I normally get questions about. So first, skincare. There are many ways to go about this this topic, and it's quite complex, but I've found 3 ways that help me to reduce exposure to certain toxins in our skincare. And there are many more, but at least if you remember this, that then you're already on a good path. So if you can, always buy fragrance-free, perfume-free products. Why? Because fragrance is normally a cocktail of chemicals. There can be 100 of chemicals, and producers, they would only write like fragrance on the label, but we never know what's in the fragrance, and these can be quite harmful, like chemicals, causing allergies, causing different sensitivities. So when you can just go fragrance free, and this applies not only to skincare but also to cleaning products, to laundry detergents, and so on and so forth. Then my mantra is saying, buy organic. You will not be buying a completely clean product, but you will be buying a cleaner product than the conventional ones. And as a rule, the fewer ingredients on the label, the better. There's simply not as much potential or room for chemicals to get their way into the product if we don't use that many ingredients. And as a rule, the largest ingredient is the first one. So for example, sometimes you buy a product that says aloe vera or argan oil, something, and then you look at the label and it's maybe one of the last ingredients, and you know simply that it's not so much of that ingredient that is present in a particular product. It's all kind of marketing tricks. I've mentioned radiation as one of the toxic exposures in our daily lives. It's a very complex issue. It's something that I've spent hours upon hours looking and researching. And I have a lot of additional information available on my Instagram account, including tips how to reduce your exposure. But just to briefly familiarize you with the issue is, if you're using devices such as cell phone, microwave, micro oven, especially smart meters, they're nasty, baby monitors, you're exposed to so-called EMF radiation. Essentially, any electric device has radiation, so-called electric low frequency radiation, but also every time a device connects to a cell tower or Bluetooth, wireless, or talks to the other device, it also emits so-called radio frequency radiation. So when you have your cell phone and it's on Wi-Fi, it's on Bluetooth, and your cellular network is also on, it means you are exposed to different sources of radiation. So personally, I try to switch off, at least one of them, or I would almost always switch off Bluetooth and leave only Wi-Fi or cellular network. At home, we have rewired our entire home, and we haven't switched off Wi-Fi completely yet, but at least at night we have a timer that switches off our router from 10 or 11 p.m. until the morning, so at least during the night our bodies get to rest. It's sometimes not very easy to convince people about the dangers of radiation, just because, you know, it's so common to use cell phones, it's so common to use smart meters and all other devices, and no one is really speaking of these dangers. Well, the fact is that smoking is not prohibited either. It doesn't mean that it's healthy for you. It's actually very, very harmful. Same thing with radiation. There are thousands upon thousands of scientific studies that show very serious adverse health effects from radiation, especially when it comes to reproductive health. So for example, if you're having fertility issues, this is something to, your exposure to radiation is something to look into. Guys, don't have phones in your front pockets, and ladies, don't have cell phones in your bras, for example, because this is where tumors appear. And once again, coming back to kids' health, their skulls are much thinner compared to adult skulls. Therefore, basically, radiation gets through their heads entirely and impacting them on a cellular level and increasing them to the risk of developing brain tumors and other conditions. So I could talk a lot about this issue, but at least I'll leave you with this message that try to look into it more. If you want a shortcut, go and read on my Instagram account. There are a lot of things that you can do to try to reduce your exposure if you're serious about it. One of other main sources of toxic exposure is actually what we wear. It comes to fashion, in both clothes and shoes. Fashion industry is both extremely toxic, but also extremely unsustainable. The carbon footprint, the amount of water that it uses, the amount of chemicals that it uses is just mind-boggling. It's a very complex issue once again, but from sustainability point of view, fashion industry is one of the dirtiest industries in the world. Over 60% of the fabrics that are produced, they're actually made of plastics, petrochemicals, and essentially none of them get recycled. It's very hard to recycle fabrics that contain several different materials. And even if you buy so-called natural fabrics such as cotton, conventional cotton is heavily treated with chemicals. It takes 3 kilos of chemicals to produce 1 kilo of cotton. This also includes, of course, pesticides and herbicides. But you get the picture here, right? Heavy metals are also heavily used in the production of garments to achieve certain look, especially in the denim in the denim industry. To get this well-worn look, some heavy metals are used, and they are also used to dye fabrics to achieve a certain color. Same thing with the shoes. A lot of toxic materials are used there. Your best shot, the best thing that you can do is, once again, try to buy organic, especially when it comes to clothes. It's more difficult to find really good non-toxic shoes, but they are out there. Keep in mind that especially your gym clothes should be organic, because as you sweat, the chemicals present in the often polyester or nylon, they get absorbed by your skin and then directly ends up in your bloodstream. Same with the shoes. As soon as your feet sweat, in the chemicals present, they get into your body. So if you cannot get non-toxic shoes, I know it's difficult, at least try to wear organic socks. And the final subject that I have here for you today is the toxic mind. It's actually negative emotions have as bad an adverse impact on our health by creating oxidative stress as any other toxic source. And I like saying that where attention goes, our energy flows. So what's in our mind ends up in our body, it impacts our body. We tend to focus on a lot of things in our day-to-day lives. We lead very stressful lives. We need to go to work. Before that, we need to drop off kids and pick them up, and after work to bring food on the table, and so on and so forth. And our success is often measured by the amount of money we make, and also our well-being is tightly connected to that. However, researchers have shown long time ago that it doesn't matter how much more money above the $75,000 a year you make, it will not make you more happy. And actually, when we look at the so-called Happy Planet Index, I have the graph on it here. It measures well-being of countries, ecological footprint, inequality, and inequality, and there was some other measure as well. I forgot it now, sorry. Well, the key takeaway there is that it's not the wealthiest countries that are the most happiest one. It's actually those that live relatively sustainably. So Costa Rica tops the charts year after year, and they achieve higher life expectancy and higher life expectancy and higher well-being at the ecological footprint that is 1/3 of the size of that of the US. So basically, developed world fails to shine when it comes to well-being, despite the fact that it may have higher material status. So with that, I'm just trying to say that sometimes all of the issues that we find so important, they are really not that important. And when I need to sort my thoughts out and when I need to reset my intention and get my act together, I find that meditation is extremely helpful here. So finally, just a few very last tips here. This is a chart that I sometimes show to my friends when to show how what a nerdy analyst I've become when it comes to non-toxic living. These are all of the issues I look at when I try to find a really sustainable and good product. This are the issues that I find are very important to look at. However, it doesn't mean that this is where you need to start. I can go even deeper into that, but I will not. I will, however, come back to the message that I had at the beginning of this presentation, and it's this one. Always focus on the first step. This is what matters. Step by step, you will get to where you're supposed to be. And it's not important where you start, it is the action of starting that is really important. This is my last slide, and this is the ultimate non-toxic checklist, as I call it. These are all of the tips that I have summarized on one slide. I have it also on Instagram if you want to download it and have it on your phone. There are very concrete non-toxic steps that you can take to reduce your exposure, to improve your well-being in various areas of your life here. So please take a moment, go through them, and I hope that you'll find a few steps that you can take to make a meaningful impact on your life. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and thank you for taking the time. The fact that you pressed on the Zoom link and joined today already shows that you find these topics important, and by sticking through the presentation, you hopefully understood the various sources of toxicity that are out there, and now by knowing them, you can actually make a difference, because that's why it is important to know them, because when you know them, it's when you actually can do something about them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Milda. It's a really fantastic presentation, powerful messages, and what I appreciate the most is your sort of unconventional way of looking at things, and that sort of encouragement and boldness to question the way we live, and that environment that we allow ourselves to get surrounded with. And as you mentioned, that industrial labeling and all types of abbreviations or all this type of contradictive research when it comes to protection of technology evolution, what it does to us, both on the upside and downside, I think can be really confusing and tricky. For us, just a common consumer to understand. So again, thanks a lot. It's really valuable insight and advice. Scary to some extent again, but there is nothing more dangerous than ignorance, right? So thanks again. And I will have 5 minutes break. which you can use for either questions, which you can type in the chat pane. And haven't actually looked how many there are right now, but please do that. Or please feel free, go get a coffee if you would like to do that. But for everyone who are interested to hearing more about our one of our new entrepreneurship initiatives, I encourage you to stay with us. And with that said, we are welcoming Nontoxic to present his green startup, EcoEgg. Very exciting. Ignas, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for presentation. That was really nice.
Yeah.
And today I will be joined by my girlfriend,
Cortina.
so we will present together. Can you hear us?
Great, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So while we think questions, we will present our new business idea, EcoEgg.
So let's bring natural ideas to your garden. So first of all, we will present a little bit what you will hear about. So what is EcoEgg? Why oak we chose? And then you will hear our kind of selling methods and our general ideas to your garden.
So EcoEgg is a Swedish company based in Stockholm, Sweden. So the name is also Swedish, but it is easily translatable to English, and it means Eco Oak. Basically, we deliver 3 services. Firstly, oak material in different measurements, and also we deliver service as ideas. So we not only sell blank material like planks, we also suggest what to build and how to build, so you could play a creative role in creating something. And also we suggest help from visualizing your ideas in 3D modeling into transferring them into real world by carpenter help.
So why oak in general? The oak material is called hardwood. It means we need to use much less wood to hold something a lot. For example, more weight. It can hold with less material. Instead of, for example, pine, which is soft wood, then you need to use more. And most of the time, pine as soft wood need to be treated with the chemicals to stay longer outside, to be exposed in the rain, sun, and other weathers. So with oak, there is no such a thing. Actually, it's because of hardwood. It can stay in the sun for a long time, sun and other weathers. So in that case, we're coming to the point when we're using somewhere close to our environment, then it comes a natural product, and it's harmless. No toxics needed to be used. So in that case, we have very great quality life.
We offer to buy the oak in 3 ways. Firstly, just as a simple material, as you see in the first photo, just simple plank of oaks. And you can use your imagination to create something. But also, you can select a second method, like a partly prepared. So with your idea or our idea, we measure the oak and cut it. And so with the help of instructions, you can assemble the product, the final product. So the main idea behind this is that you get a touch with the nature, with the oak, and you play active creative role in creating something great. But also we suggest ready to use products, so they are good to use directly.
So yeah, this is the main point. So we have some straight our ideas, like you can see here. It's a raised garden beds for flowers or any plants. In that case scenario, we have inside soil where it grows all plants, and it has direct contact with the wood. And as I mentioned before about the pine and treated with chemicals as impregnants to stay longer, with oak there is nothing like that. So during the time we're not getting any toxic chemicals into the soil, and from where the plant it takes all food kind of to, let's say, to grow, and in that case we have very organic food. And as you can see here, we have in different sizes, so it can be built very simply, and even it's possible to have some modular stuff. So you can create some beautiful garden place where you will have everything with the pleasure even to look at. And as we mentioned before, with the 3D modeling, what we get is we're saving a lot of material since we plan everything first on computer. And during this planning, if we will do it just with the material and screws, then we will cut everything and maybe we will miss some measurements. In that case, we need to throw away material, so it's been wasted. With the 3D modeling, we have this opportunity to have precise measurements and precise cuts we can make after. In that case, we're saving material. So everything is with the precision and with sustainability. So thank you very much. And you can reach us on an email. And for now, we have our our kind of web page on Facebook, where you can see our upcoming new stuff, and as you understand from the name, it's in Sweden for now. We have colleagues who's doing that in Denmark as well. So yeah, and webpage will come soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ignas and Katrina, for a great introduction into your new business line. A brilliant idea, and as I say, really green product, which I believe will take you far. Now, I must apologize, we are slightly behind of time, so I would really suggest that if anyone has questions for our fabulous entrepreneurs, please reach out to them directly. And if there is nothing else from anyone, in that case,
I do have quite a bunch of very good questions here that I was planning to address. Do we have time to do so?
Yes, of course. So that's the idea. We will follow the agenda. So Milda, we are really delighted to have you back and ready for Q&A session.
Absolutely.
So handing over to you.
Thank you. Just need to see where my, let's see here. Yeah, here are my questions. So I really think these are super good questions, and it's important to hear the answers to them. So from Christine, she has a question. on vaccines and heavy metals, and if there is any way to avoid them without going anti-vaccine. And she says that some of them even contain formaldehyde. This is true. A lot of vaccines contain formaldehyde, mercury, and many other heavy metals. The reason why they're there is they work as preservatives, and it's a cheaper way for the pharmaceuticals industry to preserve vaccines than using any other methods. That's why they're there. They've been defended as they're only so small amounts, they don't matter, but they do matter. And the simple answer is that no, there is no other way to not get exposed. If you are taking a vaccine, you will be exposed to those contaminants. What you can try and do, and I always advise parents that vaccinate their children, do not take multiple vaccines at the same time. Space them out. In that way, the cumulative impact of toxic heavy metals and other toxic substances will be less. So take one vaccine at a time. Vaccine program and the processes, they're so different depending on the country. At least in Dubai, where I am based, you know, we're told to take like 3-4 vaccines at a time. I'm not completely sure how it works in Sweden, but if you are advised to take several ones, at least space them out so the impact on your baby will be less. For adults, what we also can do is try to increase the amount of foods that I mentioned that can clean your body. But if you take a vaccine, the simple answer is that you will get exposed to these toxic elements. It's a very complex and complex and difficult topic to talk about, because we all want to protect our children. That's the reason why, you know, we have this belief that we need to vaccinate them, and it's a personal decision up to every family to make. If you are interested to know more, just drop me a message on Instagram. I'll send you a link to a bunch of books that are really good on advising parents how to reduce the impact of vaccines. The second question from Christine is about organic produce. Is organic still better than conventional, even on the clean 15 list? I would say it depends on vegetables and the fruits that you're buying. In some cases it may, in some cases organic could be as good as conventional. So it really depends on what you're buying. What about items that are not on the environmental working group's complete list either? So for the items that are not there, as a rule, as I said, when I cannot escape buying conventional, then I buy only produce that is protected by the peel that I then remove to reduce the toxic load. Because normally when I buy organic produce, I, as a rule, don't remove the peel because it contains a large amount of nutrients. But with a conventional one, I would remove it for any produce. And for the rest, I just simply don't buy. I buy something else that is available. Then the third question from Christine is, how far is safe for electronic devices from babies and kids? When it comes to radiation, distance is your friend. It doesn't almost matter how far, as long as you're increasing distance between you or your baby and the device, you're doing a great job. I know that there have been tests made for baby monitors, and you need around 6 to 7 feet away from the crib and the baby monitor to make sure that there is no radiation there. But when it comes to the cell phone, a lot of moms, love, using the cell phones while they're breastfeeding. Just try to keep the phone as far away from the baby as possible, or put it on the airplane mode, which I do very often. And as I said, switch off Bluetooth, maybe switch off the cellular network. All of these things help. Final question from Christine is, if there are any issues with buying organic cotton clothing if it's not GOTS certified. It's a complex issue with those certifications. GOTS certified is clearly the best when it comes to buying clothing. It's the golden standard. It's a very holistic way of certifying clothing. It looks on the entire supply chain. I don't have an issue buying other clothing with other certifications, but I would look more deeply into those because some are more rigid than the others. Sometimes non-organic can be okay if it's labeled as Oecotex safe. It's been tested for at least those chemicals. So even if it's not organic but been tested for chemicals, it can also pass as a good choice. Oh, so I'll move on then to Julia's question. She wonders what is the way that I cook the rice. I mentioned that rice can be very rich in a heavy metal called arsenic. It's because of the fact that rice grows in a lot of water. It likes water, and it's easier for rice or for any plant to take up the contaminants in the soil when they are water soluble. So with the rice, what I do is that first and foremost, I soak it and overnight. Preferably after soaking, I remove the water, I rinse it off completely. And then I boil it in a large amount of water. There is a certain ratio actually, if you want to be really rigid. I don't really follow it, but I just take the largest pot I have, I fill it with water. And after boiling, I pour the water away, I rinse it once again, and I do the same procedure one more time. And as a rule, after boiling the second time, the rice is more or less ready. So then I pour that water away again, and I put the lid on, and in that way, any remaining traces of water, they get absorbed by the rice, and it gets really fluffy and good. So it is a process, but once you get into it, it's just, for me, it's now part of my habit. That's how I do things. So it's not that complicated, but I understand that first time it can be a little bit tricky. Next question comes from Mendogas. What are the biomarkers tests that you are aware of present in Sweden or in Lithuania to estimate the body toxicity? I'm not familiar with where and how you can take those tests in either Sweden or Lithuania, not even in Dubai for that matter. What I do know is it is a complicated process to test your body for heavy metals, just because they can be hiding in different places. For example, lead is normally found in our bones, mercury can be found in soft tissues, and so on and so forth. And even by testing the first time, you may not get the results and may need to repeat the testing all over again. So my advice would be to get in touch with the functional medicine practitioner or naturopathic doctor that would normally be more open, or even have procedures for how to best test you for these toxins.
If I may jump in, just to fill you in, Milda, exactly as to say, these tests are unlikely reliable. I mean, meaning those industrial tests, because probably what the individual who asked the question is referring to, these tests that you can buy online. But also heard of these tests, some people are doing this just, you know, for curiosity, and usually you get really surprised how many different toxins you have in your body. So these tests are available online, but I guess it's more. It's really, if you want to get the quality of the results, it's always best to reach out, you know, to the health care and to check the options available.
Yeah, no,
sorry for interrupting.
No worries. I totally agree with you. Thanks for your input, Milda. A question from Alina. It is easier to buy eco clothes for children, but where to find ecological clothes and shoes for adults? Well, actually, I think that there are quite a few options available for adults as well. Even H&M has a line that that has organic clothes. I'm not particularly fond of them because not all of them are GOT certified. For kids, you're right, they are, so it's a little bit better. But there are quite a few options. I believe in even the chains like Lindex and Kappahl. They should have some options available there if you're in Sweden. When it comes to shoes, though, you are very, very right. It's very, very difficult to find really good shoes. And I've put a lot of work into that. The shoes that I bought to my kids, there are two brands that I found that I like. One is a German one called Pololo. They use only GOT certified fabrics, and the leather that they use doesn't contain any heavy metals. It's vegetable dyed. And there is another one that we've discovered. It's called Wildling shoes. I actually have them linked into my Instagram highlights if you want to check them out. These are not only non-toxic shoes in and out, but also so-called barefoot shoes. So the sole is extremely thin and it's very, very healthy for the feet or for the developing feet. But brands apart, what is important to know that there are certain materials that are less toxic than the others. So when I buy clothes or shoes and I cannot find what the brands that I'm looking for, I go for materials that I know are less toxic. For example, for clothes, it would be hemp. It would be, for shoes, it could be cork, or it could be maybe plant-based leather, so not exposed to kind of heavy metals in the dyeing process and so on. So I have this also linked in my Instagram posts. So yeah, there are different ways to go about it. Then Igne had a very good comment that I appreciate. She writes that given my take on the conventional medicine, it's important to be careful not undermining the importance of conventional medicine and methods. And you are completely right. Actually, I was meant to squeeze in a comment that conventional medicine makes a difference and is very important. And what I said about trying to question some methods, I didn't mean to any way to undermine the very hardworking and most of them well-meaning individuals that are involved in conventional medicine. What I had in mind, though, is that we as people, we have this tendency to outsource our decision making to doctors. We don't question authorities. The doctor said it's basically the law, you know. So my point was that don't be afraid to engage in a discussion with doctors. I can give you massive amount of examples from my own life where I had to take those discussions and engage in arguments. And it's not easy because you're facing an authority. You have to know quite a bit of facts to be able to back up your doubts and your questions. So it's much easier just to simply take and follow the advice and hope for the best. This is not the way I operate, and that's not the way I advise anyone, whether a follower of the conventional or the alternative medicine, to operate. But I generally completely agree with your comment. It is important to acknowledge the profound impact on our health that the conventional medicine has made. However, like any other industry, it is slow to incorporate any novel thinking because it is nonetheless impacted by a very powerful commercial interest in the pharmaceuticals industry, which has its interest in continue keeping us on pills and on keeping us sick, which is much more profitable than having us healthy when we don't inject ourselves with certain substances or pills. Anders had a question: what is most important to focus on, sustainability or non toxic if they are not compatible. The good thing is that, as a rule, non-toxic products are also more sustainable ones. For example, non-toxic products wouldn't include certain harmful chemicals or substances, and in that way, they're already much more eco-friendly for our environment. And such certain products could be, when they are non-toxic, they would be made out of more durable materials. For example, instead of plastic, we would use stainless steel or glass for like food containers. And this is also a more sustainable product from sustainability point of view, because it's more durable. We don't need to replace it as often. We don't need to buy it more often. So I would say that you need to focus on both concepts, because most of the time you would be making both a non-toxic and a sustainable decision at the same time. Avocados is on the Clean 15 list of good food, but is known for using a lot of water when growing. It's true. For example, almond milk is also given a lot of criticism, as almonds need a lot of water to grow. However, it all depends on what you compare them to. I don't know the exact amounts, especially when it comes to avocados, but I would bet my 5 cents that the amount of water that we're using in the animal industry is multiple times more compared to avocados. So everything is relative. Thoughts on air purifiers? Any recommendations? Yes, we do have air purifiers at home because simply we live literally in a sand pit here in Dubai. A lot of dust in the air, a lot of sand. So we need that. You may not necessarily need them depending on where you live. And to be completely frank with you, I don't remember the brand we're using. I suspect it even can be a Swedish one, but I can double check. If you care dropping me a message on Insta or Facebook, I'll certainly reply to you with a brand name, because some air purifiers are clearly better than the others. And my husband specifically spent a lot of time looking into them. I was a little bit off that subject. Okay. And water purifiers, water filters is another very important subject. I talk a lot about food. I almost almost deliberately excluded water from it, because it's also a very complex issue and we kind of didn't really have scope for it. The most effective water filter that I found is the one that uses a process called reverse osmosis. It is the only way that in almost essentially all harmful chemicals, including traces of pharmaceuticals or microplastics, are removed from the water. And it also should have some carbon in it to purify away the remaining substances. What is important to know that you need to put some minerals into the water that's been through the reverse osmosis, because during the process of taking all the bad stuff, it also takes away all of the good stuff, all of the minerals. So you need, to put them back. You need additional source in the form of tablets or whatever that could be. One more non-toxic tip to the audience from Igne: make sure not to eat takeaway pizza directly from the box that's made from recycled materials. These boxes are very toxic. Yes, that could be true. Of course, it depends on the material. Some wood is better than the other, some paper is better than the other, but as a general rule, be very careful with any food containers where warm food is delivered, especially when it comes to plastic or even aluminum foil. Always stainless steel, glass is always better. Any shower water filters, I need a good one to remove chlorine. Yes, we do have one at home as well, and I don't think it's actually a particularly special one, but I can definitely give you the brand name if you drop me a message. Okay, I think we touched upon all of them. Sorry if we ran a little bit over time.
Yes, apologize. We are a bit behind the time, but that was very interesting and really worth it. So if there are no more questions, I would like to thank Milda once again for an excellent contribution, making our first collective steps towards sustainability and healthy living. And thanks all for a great participation. Thanks, Katrina and Ignus, for presenting your new promising startup, and everyone else for making yourself available tonight. So with one more step closer to non-toxic living, we say stay safe and see you soon again. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.